Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Scousers Premier League panel show. We have a full panel. We will also have United's represented shortly, but I'll go around real quick. I'm your host, as always, Timuchin with Liverpool here, Alan with Arsenal, Jamie with Chelsea, Jake with Tottenham, and Glenn, the Brentford fan, is with us again. So welcome aboard, everybody. There's a lot of us, so I'm going to try to get to it right away and kind of talk about the games from last week. Obviously, we're going to focus probably a lot on the United Tottenham fan. I think it gives us a lot of talking points there. And obviously, and then we'll talk about, the week coming up and look at the standings and stuff like that as well. So let's start with the games first, I guess. But to go into the week, I think everybody over here was able to squeak something in. Brentford, no, right?
Yeah, we got a point. We got a point.
Oh,
it wasn't. Yeah, it was.
I'll take it.
It was a real forgettable game, as we may get onto. But yeah, there wasn't much for the neutral, nor much for the fans watching either. To be honest, it was a pretty sorry game of football, which is due to two teams who really, West Ham are totally out of form and our injuries are stacking up. We find ourselves in the same position. We have the most injured players in the league, and that's difficult when you have a small squad like us. So it didn't make for the best or most memorable spectacle.
But yeah, I was gonna say I remember that game, and I did think of you when I saw the score. I was like, I don't know if he's taking this, but let's take a look at the games one by one over here. Newcastle won, City won. You guys can thank me for City losing a point because I almost put Tonali's bets on it, but as I told you guys, because I didn't put anything on it, they did end up losing the points. Otherwise, they would have probably won. But Newcastle won, City won. I'm just going to throw it in the middle, and whoever wants to jump in on this one. Obviously, we saw City bounce back today in the Champions League in a good way, but is this going to be a long-term thing, 2 draws back-to-back, or do you guys think it's just like a blip and they'll get back to their ways? Traditionally, City doesn't have always the best first half. They just finish strong. But Alan, I guess I'll ask you, since you're probably the most hopeful watching this, do you see this as City's demise starting with that?
Losing Rodri is probably a big deal for them, but I don't see them as something that they're going to be worried about. They played 2 good teams back to back. Newcastle is actually showing some form. City or Pep taking a page out of Arteta's book of the dark arts and having low blocks and everything, and played for a draw. Surprisingly, a team that was talking about celebrating draws about us celebrated a draw last week, the week before, and got a draw this week against Newcastle. So, just saying, that's how City's talking so much about our mentality, but then play for a draw last week.
Oh, I love it. We all love it when Arsenal gets cocky because we know the end is near. But okay, let's get back to the score. Chelsea 4, Brighton 2. Jamie, actually, I'm going to kind of ask this when we come to the standings as well. Yeah. But Chelsea is silently up there. As a Chelsea
the fixture list has been kind. I wouldn't get too far ahead of ourselves.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you take that as a Chelsea fan, oh, you never know, this could be the year, or just kind of pleasantly surprised?
Pleasantly surprised. Fixture list has been kind. You can only beat or play who's in front of you, and I think we've strung together a few pretty solid performances. So that's encouraging. Things are coming together. Sanchez in goal and on our back line look fairly weak. The game this weekend was incredibly exciting. That was thanks to Brighton's decision to play the highest line I think I've seen since the Spurs game last season. So they either kind of pressed us on the halfway line, got the ball in attack and scored, or Sanchez enabled them to score, or our front three were having a field day, and we probably should have scored 6 to 10 goals, if I'm honest. But I think pleasantly surprised. We can see the top of the table and significantly better than we were placed this time last year. I think realistically, top 4 should be a goal, but I don't think we've quite got enough in the keg and the powder in the keg to challenge City or Arsenal. Although I think we may give Liverpool a challenge for third, perhaps, but top four.
So, do you consider yourself a pessimistic Chelsea fan, optimistic Chelsea fan? I mean, do most Chelsea fans look at it the same way?
I think most Chelsea fans are trying not to get ahead of ourselves. We've seen how poor we performed over the past 2-3 years, and we've been inconsistent at best. So I think we're optimistic, but not getting too far ahead of ourselves. The only top team we've played, a City, and we lost to City. So we play Liverpool in a couple of weeks. That'll be an interesting game and a good test of Maresca's system, and see how we fare against a good side.
Yeah, that should be an interesting game, actually. But one at a time. When Liverpool does this and look ahead, things collapse very fast over here. But Brentford won, West Ham won. Glenn, this whole Brentford conversation and comedy that we shared last week started when I say, hey, Brentford got the tough games out of the way, so they could actually be one of the surprise teams. I know you mentioned injuries and stuff like that, but is it disappointing to not get 3 points at home after putting away those difficult fixtures?
Yeah, I mean, after taking the lead once again, a Premier League record within a minute, I mean, it's incredible. How do we do it? I mean, there's a little bit of analysis, and it seems to be a long ball out wide, winning the second ball. That seems to be something we've done really good in the first minute. And Mbeumo is just exceptionally talented, and he's a really great finisher. So we've started games well, too well, you might argue, in the last couple of weeks, because it means we've had to, in theory, defend. But against West Ham, I guess the disappointing thing was, obviously, we didn't go on to get the second goal. They looked pretty rattled. They made a couple of changes, I think, at the break, and looked a bit more robust afterwards. They took off Kudos, which I was very surprised about. I'm not sure if it was a knock or not, but he seemed their brightest player in the first half. Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I don't think, I think a point in the Premier League, every game's competitive. Every team has quality. West Ham are out of form, but you look at their starting 11 and there are areas where they do have genuine quality as well. I wouldn't take any point for granted, and I wouldn't be necessarily, I'm not super disappointed, because to be honest, we kind of cancelled each other out. As I mentioned, it wasn't a great spectacle. We were two teams who aren't able, whether it's a management issue or an injury issue, to play our best football at the minute. And that was readily apparent throughout the 90 minutes. The highlights on NBC, on YouTube, are about 9 minutes long. And the first 3 minutes is just replays of our first goal. There was that little to really unpack. I couldn't believe it. What was disappointing was the manner of the goal we conceded was really, really scrappy. It was a really sloppy goal, and we've been a bit vulnerable at the back. We haven't had the defensive solidity we've had in previous seasons in the Premier League. That's been clear. And yeah, questions come up about Mbeumo, maybe a bigger team being in for him in the winter transfer window. Yeah, potentially. Although what I would say to that is we're not going to be in a position to sell. I mean, we had our worst run last season when he was injured in the team. And if there's one player in our 11 that we could not let go for, honestly, any amount of money, it would be him. It's probably going to be a different story next summer when maybe an Arsenal or whoever or somebody, if he continues to play this well, then yeah, why wouldn't a top 4, top 6 club look at him? It's a great question.
Chelsea will definitely be there, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, exactly. You can join the third team at Chelsea. But, I am okay with the point. I think West Ham did enough to earn a point. Neither of us played at our best. And yeah, we've just got a stack of injuries. So it is tricky to see the best Brentford 11 at the minute, which is frustrating. But, if we beat Wolves, we'll get on to, further games later. But if we do get a good result against Wolves, I still think that's a really strong start to the season. So, hey, draw against West Ham, I'm okay with that.
Okay, that's fair. Everton 2, Palace 1, and that's bottom of the table battle. That's, I mean, all joking aside, that is actually points for Everton the way things are shaping up down there, because looks like the bottom can really be a bottom similar to like Burnley and stuff like that last year. But Arsenal 4, Leicester City 2. Here's what I wanted to ask you, Elm.
Yeah.
Because when I woke up, don't ask me why. Well, thanks to NyQuil. This episode brought to you by NyQuil. We'll knock your ass out. Because, I did not get up until, the games are almost over somehow. But when I saw that they came at the end and won, and I was like, oh, man, they squeaked it in. This is not a good sign in the long run. These guys are getting 3 points when maybe they almost lost it. But then, being the fan that we are, afterwards when Liverpool get it, we get the sensation that like, well, I don't know, we got it this time, but I don't know if it's going to happen. As an Arsenal fan, do you take it as, man, we can't always score in the 90th minute? Or do you take joy in the fact that either way, this team finds a way to get 3 points?
I mean, you can't always. It's not sustainable to keep on finding wins in the 90th minute or finding draws in the 90th minute. I think it's a little bit concerning, but not too concerning, considering we're still in the beginning of the season. Usually, I mean, we've had results like this early on last year as well. So I think once we get back into form, back with our starting 11, our main starting 11, back with Odegaard and Marino in the squad, which Marino came back today. I think we should be fine. I'm not too terribly worried. It was a lapse in our defensive character to allow the first goal and allow a free kick to go in, considering how good we are at defending set pieces, not just scoring them. And then allowing that goal at the end as well is just for them to tie it up was disappointing. But to get the resolve and to get the 3 points at the end is showing that mentality of like from these players from the last like 3 years, just growing and growing. There is resolve there. They're going to keep on fighting for the 3 points. They're going to fight for everything that they can put in to make sure that they get the right result.
So it's not a concern; it's more like a joy. Am I taking that answer that way?
Little column A, little column B.
Oh, I got you. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Nothing but all column B is Ayo is with us with United. You're the guest of honor today, man. We're gonna talk a lot about you. Welcome aboard. But let's keep going with the scores. Forest 0, Fulham 1, huge 3 points there. And I kind of figured Alex would not be here because whenever Fulham wins, we never get a chance to have Alex brag about it. So Alex is not here this week. Wolves 1, Liverpool 2. Like similar to what we were talking about the Arsenal game, it's kind of like it's good to get these 3 points. Honestly, apart from the goal we kind of like forced to give away, it felt like that game was really under control. You wouldn't think the score was 1-0, and then you didn't think the score was 2-1. It was really under control. But as a fan, whenever the lead is only 1, well, as a fan, if you're paranoid like me, you kind of get worried. But big 3 points, and guess who is at the top of the table? Ipswich 2, Villa 2. Shea is not here because they did have the chance to go top of the league. I kind of wanted to get his take in terms of like how he was, if he was, how disappointed he was, or they were like, whatever, it's not a big deal kind of a deal. But United 0, Tottenham 3. We're going to be talking a lot about this. Let's get the good parts out of the way and have the bragging out of the way. Jake, they didn't make it. It was similar to the Liverpool game. They did kind of almost make it look too easy to go to Old Trafford and to get 3.
Sure.
Is it a lot of Spurs? Is it a lot of Uniteds in that result?
I think it's more Spurs than we're getting credit for. I think the media narrative is very much Ten Hag's team is not playing well, and a little bit of the red card splashed in. So I don't know. I think we kind of controlled that game from start to finish. And yes, United look bad and should feel bad, but I do think that it was more of a Spurs kind of forcing their way of playing on United, and United just kind of crumbling. It was, I think we had over 5 expected goals, which is insane going away to a big 6 side. So I don't know. I loved it, obviously, and not great for the Ten Hag in crowd. But obviously, we see with Ayo, he's not part of that crowd based on his subheading there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Ayo, you kind of like made it very clear where you stand on this now, and I'm sure your stance has not changed after this game and stuff. Are they just giving him 2 more days and basically crawling over to the international break, or you think they kind of made their bed and they're gonna sleep in it at least till January or sometime?
You know, to be very honest, I do not know. Like, I thought I was very confident. I even lost the bet actually that he was going to get fired in the summer, right? That's how confident I was. I was like, they're not going to leave.
Confident or hopeful? Which one is it?
I was confident, actually, like wrongly confident, right? Wrongly. But yeah, I was confident because I looked at, everything that was going on. I was like, they're not going to keep him. Like, come on now. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, these guys are like, they're going to look at the numbers, like, this is ridiculous. Like, we're lucky to finish 8th. Like, I think I came on here. I think I won in finals last season. If I remember last time I was here, I said it. Like, yeah, I don't think it's good enough. The underlying numbers showed we should have finished 14th. We're lucky to finish 8th. Regarding what they would do now, I think 60% in my head, I think if we lose Porto and Villa, he's gone for international break. That's what I think in my head. Now, if they do not fire him after those 2 losses, then I think it's just an ego thing now, right? It's the ego thing. Like, we made a call because what Ashworth and Omar Berrada came out like a month ago to like back him publicly, the famous public backing. And if
that's a kiss off that though, isn't it?
Correct. Like, usually it is, right? So that's what I'm saying. If they do not fire him up, then it's just their ego. Like, okay, we've made a decision now. We don't want to pay him off. I'm hearing it's going to cost 17.5 million to fire him now, and it could have cost 10 million this summer. So whatever. So that's what I think. But I think he's going to get fired if they lose both games, which I think they will lose Villa for sure. I don't know about Porto. I don't know what state they're in. I've not watched any game of Porto. Villa for sure are going to lose that game for sure.
Yeah, that's a tough away game. Even in good form, that's a tough place to go to and play away. So there's a lot of talking about. I guess we'll finish for shits and giggles over here and come right back to this game. But Bournemouth and Southampton also played this week. Bournemouth 3, Southampton 1. When we get fans to represent them, we'll dive more into those. But let's get back to this game. The biggest point, Jake, you mentioned the red card over there. So I'm going to come back to you guys. But I kind of want to ask the neutrals over here because we were all over the place on our Discord channel for Liverpool. Some of us on one side, some of us on the other. Apparently, Premier League was on one side. They switched to the other today and got the red card rescinded and stuff like that. But, Alan, we'll start with you. Is that a red?
No. I think it was a shocking decision made by the referees. Another week in which the referees make a horrible decision. I mean, it's done so throughout the league, not just with Arsenal, but with we've seen it with United and other bad calls that they've made throughout this entire season. I think it's time. I know the managers are not going to play nice and get together and call out the league in unison, but I think as supporters and as fans, we need to actually get together and say this is bullshit because it is. But were United going to win with Bruno Fernandes on the team? No, but I mean, they would have had a better shot, But
I mean, yeah, could be addition by subtraction too. You never know. But Jamie, is that a Reds or no?
Not for me. I think it's clear he was out of control, but he didn't. His studs didn't hit him or didn't make contact. I think that was a yellow for me. I'm glad it's been rescinded, but for Spurs' sake, I'm also glad that they were leading at the time, so the result cannot wholly be blamed on the red card and the referee's decision. I think Spurs were up at the time; they were dominating the game, and ifs and buts would have made a difference, but not a red for me.
Glenn.
Yeah, it's probably a bit harsh, but I mean, he's given the referee a decision to make, and sure, we can say it was the wrong one, Alan, right? I get that, but it's reckless. He's lunging in. I get, slow down, things look worse, and there's a slip, and I appreciate that. But, I'm just looking at it again now, and is there a chance when he knows he slips, he can pull out? Is it because, pull the leg back? Is it because he's frustrated? He's feeling a bit petulant. The game's going against his team. The season's going against him. He's got, one assist against the team that will soon be in the championship in 6 games or whatever. Like, he's having a season by his standards, which is nowhere near the ability we all know he has. And, personality aside, I think it's just a bit sloppy. And yeah, it's been rescinded. That's fine. I think it's harsh. But I'm not going to say, I've seen it plenty of times, and I can see that there is a case that it's reckless and it's dangerous and that he's caught him very late. And I don't think he should be lunging in as he slips. So, yeah, I think, harsh, but I can still understand it, actually.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, when I was watching a different game. I was watching a Fenerbahce game, and I saw the red card, and I went back to see it, and I just saw the very last, like, the slow motion, and I was like, that's the red? Because I really thought, especially if it's Fernandez, out of frustration, and I can't stand him, first of all. So I thought, he would be doing something over the top, Fernandez like kind of a deal, like, bite somebody like a rat or whatever the hell he does, So I was expecting that. So when I see that, I don't know. To me, he's trying to trip the guy as he slips. And as the other guy gets out of the trip, he kind of raises his foot, as we all would. And like, I did not think it was a red watching it live. And I'm the last guy probably to stick up for Fernandez. But people in the Discord channel, in our Liverpool channel, were like, oh, it's a clear red. I'm like, man, maybe I didn't see it right. So I literally had to go back and watch it again. And I still did not think it was a red. But I mean, Jake, I don't know what you thought as a Spurs fan watching it live, but it just felt like the game was so one-sided that I don't think anybody is going back and like putting it on the red card.
Yeah, I hope not. It was pretty one-sided at the time. I think we had 12 shots already before the red card. We had complete control and obviously had the lead. But, he slips and then he makes the decision to lunge while he's slipping. It's dangerous. The studs were up, and sure, he doesn't catch him fully and just gets the side of the boot onto his leg. But I don't know, it's kind of similar to what I said about the Arsenal kicking the ball away. You put it in the ref's hands on the field there, and once he gives the red card, it's really tough for the VAR to be like, you made a clear and obvious error. So obviously PGMOL said they did because they overturned it, or whoever overturned it. But I mean, I wouldn't have given a straight red if I were the referee on the field, but it's tough to overturn at that point.
Gotcha. Leave it to a Spurs fan to take a shot at Arsenal while emotional. I like that. I like how you did that. Very subtle. I caught it, but very subtle.
I've never done that before. I just want to point that out. I've never taken subtle shots.
Yeah, right. Good thing these are all recorded, buddy. So, let me ask you that, because I see a lot of United fans actually saying it's a red. But to me, that's because the team is so frustrated with, like, the fans are so frustrated with the team, and especially Fernandez, that it was more like, serves him right, give him a red, not because it was a red. If United was up or if the game was tied, I feel like fans would have a bigger outrage than they would. But it was so abysmal and sad to watch as a United fan. I didn't see a lot of complaints. It was more like United fans were saying it was a red than neutral fans.
Correct. I think it's two things why. First, I don't think it was red. I think it was harsh. But in real time, I thought it was a red, right? In real time, you don't see it until they show the replay. I was like, oh, that's dumb for Bruno. Then they showed the replay, and like I think Jake said, the side of his heel connects. So I'm like, nah, it's not a red. It's harsh. Right? I actually thought it was going to get overturned. That VAR was going to say, oh, they overturned this. This is not a red. But they didn't. Now, the second part of why United fans are doing that is Bruno has had a bad start, right? This season, he's been poor. I know last season he was, very underwhelming last season. So just like every typical fan base, right? They always look for a scapegoat. So Bruno is the scapegoat this season, right? It's the thing we go through every time. I'm sure other fan bases go through that, in the sense that when the team is playing bad, there has to be one or two players that's the problem. Take the person out, everything will be fine. On the flip side of that is the best player that's going to come to change it is the player that's not playing. Because I remember last season, what everybody were telling me, the old 10 guys, the 10 in guys, they're like, oh, it's the injuries, Ayo. You're being unfair. Like, the manager can have a bad season. Do not worry. When Martinez comes back, everything will be fine. Martinez came back. The next thing everybody was saying was like, Ahmad has to play. If Ahmad is there, everything will be fine. Ahmad plays. We still have issues. Oh, we're getting Delete. Delete is better than Maguire. Delete is a passer under pressure. I'm like, do you watch Bundesliga? Like, I watch all the leagues. I asked you that question. Like, do you watch it? Like, I don't think Delete is a bad player. Let me be clear. I think he's a good defender. I don't think he's a great defender. I don't think he's a bad. He's just good. Like, he's competent, right? But then people start bringing all these things like, oh, he's going to be able to pass well. We play 10 hard football. And people start sending me like clips after Southampton. I'm like, really? Southampton? Are you guys serious? Like, so that's just how our fan base works. They look for a scapegoat, and the scapegoat is the problem. And the person that's going to fix it is the person that is not available until the person comes back. Because now, what somebody was telling me the other day was, I'm sure when Shaw comes back, I'm like, please, I don't want to hear that. Do not tell me about another player that's going to come in and fix the problem. If you cannot see with your eyes where the problems are, I mean, that's your problem.
Yeah, I mean I agree. I think that was part. But Rashford was still there, so the main scapegoat is still on the pitch. I figured like everybody would go at him because he's the favorite that everybody goes after. But so let me. Okay, I don't want to give my take, so let's go around over here because we were talking about Ten Hag earlier.
Okay.
But everybody, I mean, whoever has come over there has kind of like left in the same way in about the same time, 2 to 3 years and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we know where you stand, Io. But let me I want to go around the panel and do you guys see like Jamie? Let's start with you talking about a rotation of managers. You're kind of used to this action. Do you see Ten Hag as like unsuccessful, or is he set up to fail? Like as an observer from outside, how do you rate Ten Hag?
He's certainly underperformed. I think everyone has underperformed since when they've gone to United, and the problem is I don't really know why. Is it institutional failure? Is it individual failure after failure after failure? No one's managed to really crack the code at United. I think there's such high expectation placed on the job, and when you look at other teams in the league, when you look at Man City, when you look at Spurs, even Chelsea now, to be honest, there's an identity of how they play football, and you can't really see that when you watch United play. And they've spent just as much as Chelsea have in the transfer market, and in just as suspect a way. And I don't really know. And I think, as we've been saying, it's one excuse after another with United, and he now has all of his players, and it would seem that at most football clubs there's a bit of a separation between church and state. Manager manages the team, and the director of football and hierarchy at the club manage the personnel and who plays for the club. But given there's so many players that overlap with his previous clubs, surely he has a say in that matter. So I'm rambling, but to be honest, I don't know. I don't see him as a successful manager, and I would not be shocked if he doesn't make it past the international break. But the United hierarchy tried at length to replace him in the summer and couldn't find a worthy candidate. So unless that's changed, I don't see anyone else who's become available that wasn't available in the summer. Unless a suitable candidate emerges, then maybe they won't replace him. I think it's the logical decision to replace him, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing twice and over and over and expecting different results. It seems that's what's happening, but I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked either way, to be honest.
I mean, Arteta had some problems in the beginning, right? I mean, you guys have gone through like a mini rotation as well, and there were a lot of Arteta outs in the beginning. Heck, like as early as as recently as last year for a while, right? Like there were back-to-back poor scores. There were some like Arteta out shouts. How do you compare him to Ten Hag? Do you consider Ten Hag to be set up to fail? Is the only difference like Ten Hag is another Lego head but doesn't have the hairpiece like Arteta? Like, what's different?
I think the difference is the culture. I think there's a culture in the United front office that is not built to actually be built in a culture of winning. I think they're just okay with whatever they have, and they're happy with selling tickets, selling out the games. They're not there to compete. I mean, sure, they can say they back the manager, but it's just I think the facilities are all crap. Ronaldo said their facilities were the same from like 10, 20 years ago, however long ago he played. I don't think there's any actually investment in their infrastructure to actually produce any valuable things going on. So that's what I see, and I think Ten Hag, as brilliant as he was in Eredivisie, maybe it's time to say that the Premier League is just a little bit too much for him.
I mean, Gunnar says Arsenal were a sleeping giant on Arteta. I mean, so like Jake, along the same lines, then I mean, how deep of a sleep is United that somebody has to wake him up? Or is it like, is that what it takes? Like, is it that easy of a job where it's a sleeping giant? Somebody just has to wake it up and shake it up a little bit, or is it just a much bigger job?
Well, it must be on NyQuil because they
It will
are
knock
in
your ass out. Brought to you by NyQuil.
deep sleep. I don't know. It feels like this cycle of the managers coming in and seeing this kind of mediocre Manchester United side for a while, and then they win one or two trophies, and it keeps them around longer, and then eventually they realize that the trophies didn't really mean much. Do I think that he should be sacked? No, because at least not right now, because they have so many players that he brought in that you bring in a new manager that tries to force a new system on that team with all the players that were brought in for a different system. You saw it with Spurs when they went from Mourinho to Conte to now Ange. There's been some turnover within the players to try to get into that new system. So it just will take more time, it'll take more resources. And I think, maybe January would be better because then you have the opportunity to get some new players in, or possibly give them the entire year if it's not, drastic. If they're not in, 12th to 14th by January. But I don't know. I think a sleeping giant is one way to describe it, but it would take something big to wake them up.
How about you, Glenn? Because I know I was stewing over there. So before we go on.
Oh yeah, I have some responses to some of the things that I said. So
yeah. I mean, well, yeah, it's laughably bad, isn't it? It's almost comical, the state of United right now. And when I grew up in England, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years old, the jerseys that people would have, it wouldn't usually be the local clubs. The majority of them, big top four clubs, but Man United, especially in the south of England, that was the jersey you'd see most often. I just keep thinking when I'm watching them play and watching behind the scenes, how long till that just kind of filters away, right? How long are they going to have this cultural relevance to British football? Because they're a laughingstock at the minute. And I mean, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, Ineos are a joke themselves. The fact that they, as you alluded to, Jamie, they essentially interviewed Ten Hag for his own job over the summer, right? And decided, despite a year, 2 years, certainly last season, of really awful quality football, that they were deciding to keep him. And they've given him a load of money as well, right? He spent over 600 million. Almost 300 million has been on Antony, Højlund, Casemiro, and Mount. And I'll tell you what, I don't think they're worth nearly 300 million together anymore. I mean, 30 million for the four of them, I think you do well to get that right now. So they've completely failed in management in terms of keeping him on. It was the wrong decision, clearly. The FA Cup win saved him. If they had lost against Man City, I have absolutely no doubt that he would have left the club. So this kind of shadow victory, yeah, sure, it's a big cup and you should respect the FA Cup. But, does it have the relevance of winning the FA Cup 10, 20, 30 years ago? Probably not. So the cup wins have kept him in the job. His recruitment has been expensive and horrendous. And the playing style is, I mean, if I was a fan, it's insufferable. There is no identity, as you said, Jamie. I mean, if you look at every 20 team in the Premier League, probably 15 of them have a discernible style. Even including teams like Bournemouth, Brighton, Brentford, Spurs, they have styles. They have tangible styles. United don't have that at all. They barely have a functional playing 11. So, in my opinion, he should go. I don't think it's getting any better. I completely appreciate the point I think, Jake, you made about, well, this is his players, so who's going to want to work with them? I agree, but this is a problem they should have figured out in the summer before giving him more money to buy more players. And I think in about 2 months' time, Gareth Southgate will be in charge of Man United, and I don't think the fans will enjoy that either.
Oh, we will enjoy it. Give him a 10-year contract, please. That serves you. So as a Liverpool fan, obviously, Ayo, you can appreciate how, exciting and fun this is overall. But,
absolutely.
I mean, here's my thing, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but similar to what Glenn is saying, I guess the part I don't understand is, so in summer, when they should have gotten rid of him, like you said, they go out, they look around, and then they don't find anybody that's, these days you can't keep that crap quiet anyway. But either they go to some people and they're like, nope, thanks, but no thanks. They pass on it, or they can't get the people. So I guess we're stuck with what we have. Well, that doesn't really set Ten Hag for success, for one, right? Because it's almost like it's like a U14 team. The coach quit. We don't have a new coach. So we put one of the parents who knows soccer best in charge, kind of a thing. It's hard for the players to listen to that person. I guess my bigger frustration is, then why didn't United say, hey, you know what? I guess there's nobody better right now. So we're stuck with this dude. But you know what? This is what you got, man. We're not giving you any more money because you're just going to throw it away like you did. why give him even more money to get more players that probably screws over the new guy? And then he basically brought Ajax from the Dutch league over here, and now we know the difference between the Dutch league and the Premier League.
Okay. So I think let's walk through some timelines, right? I've heard different things that have been said here. Ten Hag was not hired by Ineos, right? I hope we all remember that. He wasn't hired by Ineos. When Ten Hag was hired by the Glazers, John Mortar, that's a different front office, right? Ineos was not here. So Ineos made the call. Ineos took over, I think it was ratified in February, if I remember, right? So season is almost over. They sat through that. That's fine. That makes sense, right? Like they had to put their infrastructure in place. The people that are actually going to put the football infrastructure in place, which is like Dan Ashworth, Omar Berrada, especially Dan Ashworth, he didn't get over the line until like July, if I remember. July resumed. So this is what the speculation from the logical thing everybody's saying, right? What they did was to kick the can down the road, in the sense that we know it's going to take a year to build an infrastructure in place. The guys that were here before us did a terrible job. They fired them. They fired John Murtaugh, fired the former CEO. So we're going to build our infrastructure. While we're building the infrastructure in place, right, we kind of need like somebody that's going to take all the bullets. That's what somebody told me. And I think that's what they're doing. Now, I'm going to be very clear. Like I said, beginning of the season on my own channel, which you know about, we did a review and I talked about it. Like, I still thought it was a bad idea just because of what I think you brought up about the money you give him for the new players and what Glenn brought up. And the reason why I think it's a bad idea, what they did is, like, profiles are very critical for how managers want to play. It's very critical. So the players you brought in, in fact, I don't even think this summer we brought in bad players. Let me be clear. I think we brought in good players, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
But they are just misprofiled for what he's trying to do, right? So the challenge with that is the new manager might come in and I'm like, oh, for example, our midfield, we don't have a passing midfielder. We don't. And I was screaming when we were trying to get Ugarte. Like, why are we trying to get Ugarte? The team United misses the most in that midfield is a passing midfielder, like that can pass under pressure. That's the same problem Spurs have. Spurs have the same problem, right? We don't have a passing midfielder. But when I go to Ugarte, who's supposed to be like a younger version of Casemiro, profile-wise.
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make by walking through this timeline is, I think Ineos made a mistake keeping him, but I think some United fans, or maybe Glenn too a little bit, are going too far in how they're thinking, like, Ineos don't know what they're doing. Oh, they're terrible. Like, I don't think they don't know what they're doing. They gambled that they were to keep the count down the road just because they couldn't get their guy. Why they couldn't get their guy, nobody knows. Everybody can speculate because what they interviewed Tuchel and they interviewed De Zerbi, and they couldn't argue. Why they couldn't argue, I do not know. Nobody knows. That's number one. But my thought is that's why they did. They kicked the count down the road. I thought it was a bad decision, and it's kind of proving that way now because they're going to be forced to have to fire him. They are going to be, because top four is kind of critical, which I know it's not going to happen, but it's kind of critical for us because a report came out today based on like PSR rules, like we need to make top four. And so I think they gambled by doing that. Like they were probably better holding horse and just getting like an interim manager, like you said, let him work with the current squad and say, this is what you have for now, while we take the 1 year to find a permanent manager. And just like whatever happens this season, that's fine. We'll save the 200, I think like 250 million pounds. We're going to save it for the next manager. I think that's what they should have done.
Yeah.
And just roll off the season. But the problem is, United as an organizational institution, the fan base were going to go crazy if they fire Ten Hag after an FA Cup, right? Because everybody was rationalizing, from Gary Neville, all our ex-players in the media were rationalizing that, oh, it's the injuries. They were mitigating circumstances. Come on. This person was out, that person was out, right? A lot of them who, in my opinion, humbly enough, I don't think understand football in depth enough, right? Like they played the game, but not all of them understand it in depth, in my personal opinion, because they don't do their research. And now it's proving that it had nothing to do with injuries. Like we're still playing as bad as we played last season. So yeah.
So I mean that's the problem though, right? You made it even harder to get a new manager now because you got even more guys on high wages that he might or might not like. And I honestly, like in the offseason we were talking, some of the names, like I was like, oh, maybe they're getting their act straight because the names were good.
Correct.
But like they are saying in the comments, like the players basically take a dive when they get there. Let me ask you, do you think if somebody, whoever your ideal person is to take over, for example, right now, what is like Zidane or Nagelsmann, whoever, do you think they have the players to make it a top 14? If they started week 1, did they have a team that they could make a top 14 squad wise?
I think compete for it, yes, but not enough to make top 4. Just because squad wise, week 1, if they went with the same set of players, right? If they went with the same set of players, squad wise, I don't think we have enough goals for top 4. I don't. Okay. Defending wise, and midfield, I think we're okay, but it's still not like top 4 quality, in my opinion, because we misprofiled people we brought in. Right? I thought we should have gone for, first of all, instead of Xerxes, we should have gotten somebody that scores goals, right? Not like somebody who's like 9.5, like he called himself, right? Instead of getting Ugarte, I thought we should have used the money of Ugarte and other sales to get João Neves. Like that's the best I think. But instead, we paid PSG literally to replace the person they did not want to get João Neves, right?
Yeah,
so that's literally what we did. So yeah.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but yeah, that's basically what ended up happening. Yeah, I do find. I mean, there were a lot of people who liked him for Liverpool at one point. I don't think not now with the new system, maybe in the club system to replace Fabinho and stuff like that, because he's that kind of a player. But he's not even in this current system. I don't think he's a good fit. But let's go to the standings. Let's start with you, Alan. Your boys are look who's on top, Alan. Look who's on top. But like obviously we know the schedules, right? Do you, as Arsenal fans, do they look at the schedule and say, "Hey, we had 2 tough games out of the way, especially like with Spurs and stuff, like a tough fixture to start with, so it's almost a win to be only a point behind," or do you look at this like kind of freaking like how I do? If we didn't lose points to stupid Forest game, we could have a 4-point gap right now.
I mean, yeah, if we hadn't lost points to Brighton, we definitely would have been. We would be in first right now. So we would have 16. Yeah, we'd have 1 point on Liverpool.
So that Brighton game is the one that got away.
Yeah, that's the one I point out. I mean, yeah, that's the one we had to play with 10 men as well, and unfortunately we had to give up. We gave up a goal against them. Honestly, we have Rice for that game. I don't think that game ends 1-1. That game ends 3-1 or 3-0. And then the City game, again, situations there that happen. It is what it is. I think I'm not too worried considering we had a very tough schedule to start with in general. Going away to Villa and going away to Tottenham aren't easy games. Wolves isn't the easiest team also. Arsenal have always kind of had issues historically within the last, since they came up. And then, going away to City, getting a point there. And then on top of that, we also had, our European schedule start with Atalanta and also the EFL Cup and also managing that. And then PSG today and now Southampton next week or this Saturday. So far so good as far as things are concerned. To be a point off, I'm happy with that. Like I told someone at the Fan Fest, I yelled at them. The league isn't decided in September; it's decided in May.
No, I agree. I mean, honestly, like that's probably like what's more Liverpool fans. I mean, you obviously can only play the guys. I mean, you were talking about it earlier, Jamie, in terms of having an easier schedule, but at the same time, you can only play the guys who you can play against. And similar to Liverpool, Chelsea has a new manager trying to establish things. If you can still snatch points as many as possible while you're trying to put stuff together, it's a win-win.
Absolutely. And I think I've been pleasantly surprised with what I've seen from Maresca. Defense, as I mentioned earlier, still a bit of a leaky bucket. But if that can improve and we continue creating as many chances as we have, then I'm optimistic. We've got the next game up for Chelsea is Forest at home. That's a must-win game because post-international break we've got Liverpool, Newcastle, United, then Arsenal. Which if you view United and Newcastle as tough games, then we've got 4 very difficult fixtures in a row. So I think if we can beat Forest, and then we're in a really good position going into the international break. think we've got a couple guys, Romeo Lavia coming back, but I think we just need to wrap Cole Palmer in cotton wool for the international break and pray that he doesn't get injured, because I think that's probably going to be a significant variance to our projected ranking at the end of the season if he is to. I'm assuming he's going to play every game, but if he doesn't, then we may not be competing for the Champions League spots.
Yeah, it does seem like it all hinges on him, right? And I feel like the team, sometimes those things are psychological. It's like having Mo on the pitch. Like, it's like, hey, we have him over here. We're going to get this kind of a deal. But we talked a little bit, obviously, earlier, Glenn. 12th right now with the tough schedule. Yeah, I got the face from Alex when I said you guys would finish probably 8 to 12. Is that where you see this team? Do you have higher ambitions, knowing the first part of the schedule was really some of the toughest games?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends when we're going to get players, back fit as well. I mean, just look at that front line. I mean, Sharda limped off in the game against West Ham. We don't really actually have a forward. If Sharda's injured beyond this, for this next game, we actually don't really have a forward to play, which is challenging. I don't want to scratch it all up to injuries, because obviously, there's more to it than that. But when you have a club with a budget, the fraction of a team like Man United, who, may I add, do sit one place below us. That was my highlight of the United game, was them dropping below us after that result. That was funny. But when you have a team with limited resources, right, and you have a much more shallow squad depth, and whether it's Chelsea or Arsenal or United, any of those teams who have the resources and money, it is challenging when key players just continue to get injured. So if we had a fully fit squad, I'd say, yeah, I would aim for 8th would be a really nice ceiling, I think, for this squad. 10th may be more realistic. But, the more and more people who just keep dropping out, whether it's Wissa or Sharda or Norgard or Jensen, that these are integral players to our system, to scoring goals. There's a reason we didn't look like we were going to score against West Ham for about 80 minutes at the weekend. It was because we didn't really have much in terms of firepower. So, it's frustrating to be talking about injuries again this season after it completely demoralized the fans and players last season. Obviously, in a perfect world, you'd have a bigger squad, right? And you'd maybe have contingency plans. Like Neil Malpe, for example, he actually played a really good role for us last season. He was laughing stock at Everton. That was just a terrible fit of club and personality. But, we did get him back on a shorter contract, and he scored some really important goals. And unfortunately, at the minute, we don't have somebody like a Neil Malpe who can just play cup games and play 1 in 3 in the league. So, I don't think, as it stands at the minute, would be looking top half. I would say just, 16 plus. But you look at the table, there's still 5 teams who haven't won a game this season, and we're not one of them. We've won 2 games. So if we get a good result against Wolves at the weekend, we're still in a really good shape despite the injuries.
Yeah, and then going into the international break, again, everybody's favorite time of year, another international break coming up. And there's another one actually a month from now, I think, like a month and a half or something like that. But obviously your situation is a lot trickier. Do you, as the United fan, who is a Ten Hag out guy, especially, do you just want to take the medicine and get it done and over with? Almost like root for a bad result against Villa. So it's, they pull the plug. I know it's hard to do that as a fan because, once the game starts, you can't. But do you even care until it's, what's done is done this season, put it away? Because if Ruud takes over, is a lot going to change? Maybe that new manager smell for a month or something like that. But the main core problems are still going to be there.
I think where I am is, I just wait for them to just make a decision and move forward, because this is like an emergency situation at this point. This is you have the damage is, in my opinion, and it's just 6 games, right? It's just 6 games, but we already lost 3 games already, right? And we have not even played a lot of tough games already, and we've lost 3 already. So I think where I am is, just make the call, move on, and put an intern in place. If it's Rude, whatever, put Rude in place. I don't care.
Do you think that's why they brought Rude, by the way, in the first place? Here's a plan B. Why don't you be his assistant? In a couple of months, you'll probably be in charge.
I do not know. This is why I said I do not know, because Ten Hag made the call, right? Ten Hag reached out to Rude and the other Dutch assistant coach, right? So he was forced. Ten Hag was forced to change his backroom staff. That was a call that was made from Ineos, like Justin Wilcox, the first thing that has to change, that something has to change. He should bring new ideas, right? That was kind of the agreement during their meeting. So, but it was him that reached out to Rude and reached out. Now, is it one of those things that where Jason Wilcox gave him some names and suggested? Who knows? Who knows?
But the paper with just Rude's name on it.
Who knows? But it's possible that that's the plan they have, right? I'm not a big fan of that process, because all the people who I trust who watch Dutch football say he didn't do great in PSV. Like he didn't have great ideas. So when he came second, so I'm not a huge fan of Rude becoming now. We've gone through that process with Ole. I'm good. I'm not a fan of former player thing. I'm good. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I agree to that. I know you guys had Arteta. Chelsea has been a revolving door, but I almost feel like when you get an ex-player as a manager, as a fan, it's very hard to differentiate having seen that guy as a player. Correct. Especially if you're an old fart like me, you probably watched him play as well, right?
I did.
It's kind of hard to put that away from the manager guy. That's why, when everybody after Klopp, everybody was like Stevie G, and thank God the Villa experiment kind of failed, so that didn't never happen. But I just did not want it to happen, and nothing I don't think he was the man for the job anyway, but I just feel like as a fan, I would not be able to evaluate a guy just on his management, because when I look at him, I don't see him as a manager even. I'm just seeing his, highlights.
Yeah, I prayed for that to happen. I was so sad. I wanted Stevie G to come. I prayed. We need Stevie G in Liverpool.
See, this is what happens when you wish ill on others. This is what goes around, comes around.
But yeah, I think, in my opinion, it's where I am with all of this is Rude should come in. If it's Rude, whatever, who cares? And just figure out and try to get a full-time manager in January. Yeah, that's where I am.
See, normally we do Tonali's picks, which we will do with the games for next week. But we figured this week, we were talking in the chat on Discord, we should do Tonali's odds and everybody guess how long Ten Hag will be there. So you give a month of where Ten Hag will be leaving United. Alan, we'll start with you.
Oh man, I can't even look up the United fixtures right now. Before the Christmas games, before the holiday games.
So right December around that time. You're going with?
In December, yep.
Okay. Jamie.
What month is it now? October.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
October. I think he will be out.
Oh my God.
Next week. Glenn, what do you have?
Yeah, October. I think so. I think, as we said, if, two games that aren't easy, Porto get a positive result. Villa, Watkins, Rodgers. Oh my goodness, they'll run rings around that midfield and defense. How about after that game, October 7th? That's going to be my bet.
You're basically wishing October. We're not asking for a wish list for you, but based on the schedule, and it's almost because the international break is there, it almost seems ideal. But
yeah.
I know you said you don't know, you don't want to even guess, too scared to even guess, but when
I think it's October. I think it will happen this international break. I think it's gotten, the signs that all the leaks started coming out, so I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, they got the kiss of death, and I was like, oh, he's definitely gone now. When they said, we're definitely behind him for another 2 games. That's basically saying he's gone after those 2 games kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, let's get to Tonali's picks for the week. I'm doing really good. I just won another Champions League bet today, so we're on a roll over here. Tonali would be proud. Let's go to the week over here. Alan, we'll start with you. Let me see if I can get this thing a bit bigger for you to see a bit more. But I see it. As good as I'm going to get it. What is your upset aside from Southampton getting something against Arsenal? Where do you go? I have zero hope on that game, to be honest, but go ahead.
6-0. That game's 6-0.
Yeah, we hope so. Looking at upsets here, Ten Hag keeps his job. United wins 2-0.
What?
Yeah.
I always doesn't know to be smiling or crying or
nothing against Ten Hag. I think he should go. As much as we joke about opposing fans being Ten Hag in, I think he should go. But I think United is actually going to find something against Villa.
Wow, that's a big shout. That's a big shot. Like it. Jamie, what do you have?
I think Brighton may hold Spurs. I could see that ending in a draw. It's not so much of an upset, but I think Spurs have got sights set on European placements. I think they're going to want to walk out of the Amex with a victory. I don't think they will.
Glenn, what do we
I
have?
respect that, Jamie.
Ellen approves.
I am going to go for a big upset. I don't know if we're going to count a draw here, but I think, and it pains me to say this as a Brentford fan, I think Fulham have a decent chance of putting in a solid performance at the Etihad and maybe getting a point. They've had a really good start to the season. I think they're kind of flying under the radar. It's funny because there's a lot of older Premier League picks, right? Remember Traore and Jimenez at Wolves in the iconic era. They've kind of reconnected. Smith Rowe, I mean, he's getting fitter and fitter. And I think they're a really real well-drilled team. And we know teams like Crystal Palace, Brentford, potentially Fulham, teams can go to the Etihad and get a result if they set up well. So I'm going to say I would not be surprised if Man City failed to get 3 points against Fulham this weekend.
That's a good shout. I would love to see it. I just feel like Fulham is always, having played against them, they're always so naive. Like when things go well, they just get way too excited, open way up, and then they get concede goals and stuff like that. It's happened against Liverpool. It's happened against City. But yeah, I would love to see it. But Ayo, you're the man of the hour, man. You're the good dude to put up with us. Even Spooby is like telling you to keep strong. I would say it's all a big cycle. It will come back around, but man, this has been around for a while. We've been enjoying this for quite some time.
Hey, Liverpool were dead for 30 years. Don't even do that. Don't do that, please.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember.
don't
I
even
just
do
look at
that.
these last 10 years, and I'm like,
It's fine. It's fine. It's a cycle. It'll all come back. I think Bournemouth will beat Leicester.
Okay.
That's my. I guess I think Bournemouth will beat Leicester. I don't know if that's an offset, but yeah, I think Bournemouth will beat Leicester. Away.
I'll be honest. I'm amazed none of you guys want with Crystal Palace because I'm afraid of that game. Freaking crack of dawn. Well, not crack of dawn back there, but still the early game on a Saturday. I know Palace is always a tough place to go to. If it was home, I would not be as worried, but it's a tough place to go to first thing in the morning after the Champions League game and stuff like that. But and they do have the Chiesa, Jota were not going to be there tomorrow. I don't know. That means they'll be able to hopefully play the weekend or whatever. But I'm going to go with Forest. I know James is not going to like this, but I think they're a team. I know personally they know how to sit back. And Chelsea's defense leaks more goals than Liverpool, so I think they can get something on the counter as well. So I am going with Forest against Chelsea, and then that will be before, obviously, after the international break. We'll come back. We'll probably talk about doing an international break as well. Do you guys follow? I don't think I asked you. You guys are kind of relatively newer, so I asked you guys. Do you follow the international break closely, or is that time off from soccer where you don't have to even think about soccer and soccer-related things like Uniteds and stuff?
Yeah, switch up. That's why I take my break. That's why I do my mental wellness break. I don't follow international.
How about you, Glenn? You and the other Brentford fans, do you guys take the time off, or is it like, are you like into watching international soccer?
Yeah, it's not. Well, it always depends on the context, right? But I find it frustrating that it breaks up. The Premier League gets momentum. We saw this so clearly with the previous international break, which came so early. And keep in mind, this comes out after the back of major European, South American, regional tournaments over the summer. I would love it if we had a break from international breaks and just played a serious block of just domestic football. I would love that. That isn't the case. I check in. Obviously, from an England fan's perspective, there's questions over who the new manager might be. So I'm kind of just checking in and maybe watching a half here and there, seeing how the team performs. But yeah, it's usually more downtime. It's usually focusing on other hobbies, catching up with some films, enjoying some music, and just not, maybe checking the injury updates for Brentford. That seems to be an international break recurring feature for me, but that's about it.
Go out looking for other Brentford fans. Yeah. And I'll be honest, it's weird though, right? Like you don't know what the hell to do with yourself on a weekend. You wake up in the morning, you're like, what do I do in the mornings? Because there's nothing to watch. What the hell kind of a thing. Jamie, how into are you when it comes to national teams?
I'll follow it. I'm curious what the narrative's going to be. Cole Palmer versus Phil Foden in that number 10 role. I probably won't watch the game. It'll be college game day and NFL for me on that weekend. And rested, hoping that Chelsea can continue the form we've taken into the international break. I say have taken. I'm assuming we're going to get a result at Forest, but we'll see. Dangerous games to play.
Believe me, when I put my Tonali money on there, you're guaranteed for a win now, because that's not going to happen. That's why I didn't pick City last week. But Alan, do you just sit down and hope for no injuries, or do you even turn it on when it comes to international soccer?
I don't turn it on international. I don't turn on international soccer unless I'm watching a big tournament in the summer, or even if we have it in December for some crazy reason. But yeah, I really don't care so much about international soccer. I just hope that our players don't get injured, come back safe, have good time out there representing their countries. And then like everyone else said, well, at least Glenn and Io, I just sit back, relax, do some hobbies, not worry too much about my heart, whatever Arsenal's gonna do to it late on in games sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah, and I'll watch Turkey just because they're in this transition, a lot of young talent and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting, even though these are glorified friendlies, it's kind of interesting to see where this team is headed as we approach the World Cup and stuff like that. But yeah, aside from that, like sometimes just because it's soccer and there's a TV, I might just turn it on, but then I'm not really enjoying the game. I'm more rooting against injuries. Like these guys, we want them to do well, because not sometimes, almost every time, a positive performance in the international break does carry on when they come back, especially if it was a player that was struggling and stuff like that. But it's hard to enjoy when all you're hoping is for like no injuries for the most part. But we'll be back next week. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about again from this weekend. Gentlemen, thanks a lot for everything. Io, especially you, man, you're putting up with a lot of shit. But hey, over the last couple of years, I'm sure you're used to it by now. It goes one ear out the other.
That's fine.
But yeah, have a great week, everybody. Thanks to all those comments and liking. Give us a subscribe. Hit all those buttons down there, except the one that says thumbs down. And we'll see you guys next week.